Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is Friday at about um, 10 o'clock, I believe. Kind of an overcasty day. Yeah, 10 o'clock. Hope everyone's doing good. So, today's show is going to be a really different kind of a show. I I always talk about my love of music and film. I always talk about I've done a lot of I did a specific show on my my band Quantum, my electronic group, and just how that is really inspired by film and all things film. You know, everything from like all really related to all the aesthetics that are tied into film that I love. You know, the mood that a film can create, the the um, the storyline, the even the costume design, the music, the film score. So, and again, music that I listen to obviously is a huge source of inspiration for that. But overall, like I've said in the past, in past videos, films are even more of an influence on me and when it comes to writing music for my band Quantum, and as well as for when we do shows, with the whole visual thing, with using, a somewhat of a theatrical kind of presentation with, some specific kinds of lighting techniques or things that I'll try to do, and especially around the masks that I use and visual props. Try to give things a different flavor every time, but hugely inspired by film. So I've always bounced back and forth with these shows, how I've talked about film and music, and I've done shows on specific things around films, like particular directors that I really love. I did a show on where I just talked about soundtracks and film scores. I did a show on my favorite electronic group, Autechre, my favorite band of all time. So I've always said, and people who are probably familiar or who know me and are familiar with this channel know that those two things are, part for me, are just a branch in the same tree. They're interconnected. So it's always like a natural thing for me to kind of talk about, as far as just being an avid fan of film and music, but then also what, at the end of the day, really inspires this weird little thing that I do, and the weird little things that I spend my time doing. So so today's show is going to be really different. I'm going to do my first kind of concert review. I've never done a concert review. I've done lots of shows on music. I've done some shows. I did a series, two parts on my favorite style of extreme music, and that is black metal. So I'm always trying to mix things up. So today is going to be a little bit of a different thing. It's going to be just a concert review. So I last night I went, and it was completely unplanned. It was kind of this by the seat of my pants, which kind of added to it. I went last night to see Pantera in Bangor, Maine, at the Waterfront Pavilion, right on the water in Bangor. And it was totally not planned, like I said, and it was a whole kind of funny thing with, how it came about, and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to, it's still fresh in my mind. I wanted to talk about it. And again, I always love to try to add some kind of new content to this channel, some new videos, and try to bring some variety. So about like it was probably about 5 or 6 months ago. On the side, I I teach drum lessons, and so I have during the summer. It's usually pretty hard for me to keep up with the lessons, and then also with the handful of students that I have or that I've had, it fluctuates. Sometimes I have a pretty decent amount. Sometimes I have quite a bit, and I have had some experience teaching at schools, and when I've done that, and com- and then when I combine that with teaching privately, I can get fairly busy, for the most part. But I usually always maintain, a little group of students that I have throughout the year that I have privately. But during the summer, it's pretty tough. People have a lot of things going on, so generally it seems like it always tapers off. So now that we're going into the summer is coming, pretty much coming to an end, starting to kind of reboot that schedule again. And I have one student who is just amazing. This kid Orion, and he's a little kid, and he is just awesome. And his parents are both avid music fans, and his dad was a singer in a band, in a hardcore band. And I've been teaching him drum lessons for probably about 6 months. We are going to start up next week, but we didn't do any lessons all summer. It's been really awesome because he's been actually playing gigs, and he's actually been doing it, and it's been really awesome. I helped him out with his first gig that he ever had. He got a call from somebody that he's jammed with about playing a gig, and he never had an experience playing live with anybody, or what it entails to like bring your equipment to a venue or to a space and set it up, and do a sound check and then play a gig, and then what it's like to get paid at the end of it. And so I helped him out, and it was awesome. It was wonderful to see. I always take immense pleasure out of seeing, whenever I've had a student throughout the years that takes it a step further to where they want to be, a gigging musician, or they really want to, you know, I think of it as like taking it out of the practice space and actually making it into a real thing. And, again, being a musician, you can take it, there's so many different levels, and there's so many different avenues that a person can explore. And I think there's lots of different ways of, success. Like, you can be, and it's also very subjective. I think there's a lot of forms of success. You can maybe as a musician venture into doing lots of recording work where you can kind of become a session musician and do, whether it's like low scale recording projects or bigger scale projects. But there's a source of income that you can make out of that. There are the musicians that play like weekend gigs at like local bars. They play in cover bands, and then they play local little bars, little dive bars. There are bands that, and it's kind of a hobby. Then there are musicians out there that play all the time, and it's their source of income, and they play gigs as their it's their bread and butter. Basically, how they put food on the table. And then you have musicians that tour, maybe across their state, or in their region that they live in of the country, or they tour nationally. And then you have the next level of musicians that are, doing all of those things, but on a bigger scale, and obviously that is their source of income. So you have so many different kinds of ways, and then also lots of musicians I know make a living off of teaching. Whether it's online, or they work at a school, or they teach privately. There's so many different ways, and then there's a lot of musicians now with through the use of technology that work for different companies when it comes to like streaming platforms. So there's so many different things that musicians can do. I think that's one plus of where we're at right now in our digital age, is that I think to a degree, even though costs are more obviously for just for daily living, and it's it's kind of crazy to say the least. But I think there's a lot more avenues to explore for musicians to kind of get creative and maybe make a living out of it, whether they're you know be you know aside from if they have aspirations to become big rock stars or just have enough to where they can make a living. So I think it's there's a lot of leeway and there's a lot more um, forms of what success can be. So it's interesting. But my student that I've had, Orion, he and his dad had gotten tickets to see Pantera, and it was like tickets had gone on sale for this show, I think in January or February of this year, and they bought tickets right away. And you know, I really am a huge Pantera fan. They were a band that I loved, and I saw them about two or three times in concert when I was in. I saw them once when I was in high school. I saw them when I was out of college. I might have seen them one other time. I saw them play once in New York City, and it was completely insane. And then I saw them play at the Ozfest maybe about 7 years later. And I've always loved Pantera. I've always been a huge fan of their music, especially when their music got even more extreme. They each album over the years has gotten more extreme and more heavy. They've also done a lot for, I think, extreme music in a lot of ways. They were the first band to uh, bring, to a degree, death metal to the main stage. They toured with Morbid Angel, and they were a major band at the time. They were one of the biggest bands, if not the biggest bands at that particular time in the late '90s. And Phil Anselmo, the singer, has always been really outspoken about different forms of extreme metal that he loves. He has collaborated with people who are part of the black metal scene. He's also put together festivals where he's had those bands involved, and he's also talked a lot about death metal bands that he loves, and I feel like with their music over the years, it had gotten more extreme, and I could hear more and more of those influences in their music. And so they were a pretty big force at that time, and they took Morbid Angel out on the road, and they were able to play arenas for thousands and thousands of people. And Morbid Angel is my favorite death metal band of all time. So they have a really cool connection, I think, with extreme music, and I think they've done a lot for that style. And so the tickets, when I had heard about the show in Bangor, they were really expensive. I think they were like, I could be wrong, but I think they were like 130 per person at the starting price, and that was a little bit too much for me. And obviously, there's been a lot of tragedy around the Pantera camp with losing two of the key members of the band, with Dimebag Darrell, the amazing guitar player, virtuoso guitar player who basically got murdered at a performance, and then his brother, um, who was just such an amazing drummer, Vinnie Paul, passed away a few years after that. I believe it was from a heart attack. So Pantera for a long time had essentially broken up before these tragedies had happened. I think they were crippled by, the band got to the point of where they were kind of crippled by addiction. And a lot of that stuff is pretty much out in the open. But they kind of called it quits for a while, and they kind of went in different directions, and then these tragedies happened. But it was announced last year that they were going to basically do this big tribute show, and they were going to go out on the road, and and Charlie Benante from Anthrax was going to be playing drums, and Zach Wilde was going to be playing guitar from Ozzy Osbourne and Black Label Society. along with Phil Anselmo and Rex, the original members. And at first, there was a little bit of backlash around it. People were like, well, okay, these guys are going to do this massive tour. It's going to be probably gonzo crazy and just massive. And then it was also announced around that time that they were going to be doing this massive tour, which they're in the middle of doing with Metallica, the biggest metal band in the galaxy. And they got flack because of the ticket prices, because the ticket prices for those shows were pretty crazy, especially the Metallica show, or shows. And then also they got backlash a little bit to a degree because people were like, well, these guys are going to just, you know, do this kind of bastardized cover band thing and just try to make money off of their legacy. But, and then I saw some footage on YouTube once the tour started. I saw some footage of them playing with this kind of new configuration. And I was pretty blown away by how incredible they sounded. And I got a sense, and after checking things out, that it wasn't them trying to make a cash grab out of the legacy that Pantera's created. I think it was their whole motivation to kind of put this thing together. And I believe it was pretty much Phil Anselmo, the lead singer of Pantera. It was pretty much, I think, his kind of thing to put together. I think it was out of a genuine place, and from a genuine place, out of respect, and paying it back, and really paying tribute to his fallen comrades and his brothers. And I think that's really what it was. And I think it was genuine. It was not anything more. So, and then when I realized when they're also in the midst of this tour with Metallica, the prices were insane for the tickets. And when I looked into what the actual shows were, it was kind of insane because it was ticket prices were heavy duty, but you were getting two concerts with that ticket price, and then they were doing, each night was going to be a different set, so you were getting a lot of fucking music for that price. I mean, pretty insane. And plus the package with it included a whole slew of bands. Basically, it was like a festival thing. So then when I realized that's what this whole thing was, maybe that price is reasonable. It was kind of interesting. So, but anyway, so initially I didn't buy a ticket to go see Pantera. It was a little bit out of my price range, but I've been checking out a lot of the videos of the tour, and I was like, wow, like these guys sound killer. I was just like, holy shit, they are tearing it up. And I knew the show was coming up, and then I talked to my student Orion and his parents, who I'm good friends with, about setting up more, drum lessons, and we were going to have our first lesson back yesterday. But then they told me, and they reminded me, well, actually, he's going to see Pantera tonight. So I was like, oh, that's right, Pantera. And they played last night at the Bangor Pavilion in Bangor, right on the waterfront. So I was like, oh, okay, no shit. I forgot about that. I forgot, that was happening already. So, and then, yes, it was late. The show was yesterday, which was Thursday. And late Wednesday night, I happened to be on Facebook. And I saw this girl that I kind of know, who lives pretty close by, was basically selling off one single ticket for Pantera. And she was selling him for a really good price. Much cheaper than the original price. And I was just like, holy shit. And I thought about it for a second, and I was just like, man, that's a really good price. I could totally go to this. Why don't I check it out? But then I was kind of on the fence about it for some reason. I was kind of on the fence, and I kind of procrastinated. And then before I went to bed on Wednesday, I sent her a message just inquiring, has the ticket sold yet? And, because I was figuring it was probably sold. And then I woke up Thursday morning, And she had messaged me back saying, no, the ticket's still available. So I was like, oh shit, cool. All right. So I was like, yes, let's do it. And then I said to her, yeah, I'm totally down for buying this ticket. So then at that point, we talked about the payment. And and in order to get the ticket from her, there had to be like a digital transfer to where I could basically get the ticket on my phone and use it through Ticketmaster, and that would be the way of taking care of it. And initially, I was like, "Well, I can meet you. I'm getting out at work at 5. I can meet you, pay you in cash for the ticket, grab the ticket, and then we're good to go." And she's like, "Well, no, we'll have to do it digitally because that's how the ticket is formatted." And that was the only way I could do it. So I only use my phone really for a couple of things. Like I have Messenger from Facebook, I have Instagram, and then I use it for my. I have internet on it obviously, but I don't have a lot of apps. I don't have my email on it. I use a laptop for emails and for when I use my Gmail and other work that I have to do or whatever. I use my laptop. I don't usually use my phone for that. So I had to try setting up my email for her to email the stuff to me, but it had to be on my phone. I had to set up two different accounts, and for whatever reason, Google wasn't letting me set up, wasn't confirming the password. So I reached out to a friend and I'm like, "What's going on here?" And they're like, "It could be some kind of weird thing with Google, um, with your account." And I was like, "What the heck's going on?" And so I couldn't set it up. It wasn't letting me set it up. So finally, I it took me a while, and it was, and I've talked about it too before. I'm kind of dumb when it comes to technology. Kind of a dumb head. So roughly, and it's kind of embarrassing to admit it, but roughly about 3 hours later, I finally got everything situated. So I the other thing that was kind of funny, or not funny, but it was a little bit crazy. The show time was early. There were three bands on the bill. Pantera was, of course, headlining, and their Lamb of God was also playing. I didn't know who the first band was, and the show was starting early at like 6:30. The pavilion, the Bangor Pavilion, is all outside, and it's right kind of in the main area of Bangor. So there's noise ordinances. So the shows have to be done by 10. So they're pretty early, the shows. So it had an early start. So I work typically to till about 5:30 every day. And Bangor is about an hour from here, or is yeah, it's about exactly an hour or a little less. And I was going to be, the plan was to just go from work, and I didn't know anybody who was going. I wasn't. I was going to essentially, because it was last minute, I was going by myself. I was just going to go. So I was, figured I have enough time to get there, and I knew parking's going to be a thing and all those things. But I figured, okay, this will be doable. And this week I've been getting out of work early. I've been getting out of work at like, you know, quite a bit earlier. So I felt, okay, that'll give me even more time. But then yesterday I ended up getting out of work at 5:30. It ended up going later, which is it should be the normal time for me, but I ended up getting out later than I expected. So I had to like grab some food quick, and then I had to put gas in my car, and I drove up there, made pretty good time, and then I paid like 15 or 20 bucks to park because I didn't want to have to drive around for 2 hours to park, and so I just was like, screw it, I'll just pay for paid parking, and I got paid parking, and I parked like directly across the street from the venue, and I got situated, and then I got out, walked to the thing, and I have a chain wallet, and they wouldn't let me in because of my chain wallet, and I was just like, what? Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. It happened to me before because I had gone. The last time I went to the Bangor Pavilion was actually to see Hall and Oates and Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, and that was a killer show. That was one of the last shows I went there, and that was a few years back. And I couldn't go in with my wallet. And I remember that show I had parked really far away, so I had to walk all the way back to my car, take my wallet, put it in my car, grab my credit card, my ID, or my money, and stick that in my pocket, and then walk all the way back. But this time, I was at least parked directly across the street, so I just ran over to my car and threw my wallet in there. And I was just like talking to the people there. I'm like the security, and I'm like, why is that? It's like, well, it's a weapon. It can be used as a weapon. I'm just like, what? Because I have it on me all the time, my chain wallet, and that's how I wear my wallet. And I had gone to, you know, all I've been to so many events, and I've never had that as an issue. I saw Morbid Angel this year, and you know, it's like what? It's totally ridiculous. But anyway, I got that situated, and I went and I came back and I got in. And like I said, I had not been to the Bangor Pavilion in a long time, and it's totally redone. It's almost unrecognizable to where it used to be. They designed it to be a real a real deal amphitheater. It's really nice. I was really impressed with it. It's really easy to find your seating when you go in. There's all these different entrances, and but it's like super easy to get in, super easy to find your seat and to just get situated. There's like all kinds of places to get food. There's all kinds of places to drink, to get alcohol. It's really great. The seats are actually really comfortable. Um, and the rows. I was sit. I was back quite a ways in the 200 area, and I thought, okay, these are going to be. The sound is going to be really good, and I'm pretty far away from the stage. And how will it be? And when I was walking in there, when I had been to the pavilion quite a few times over the years. I saw Arcade Fire there once, which was awesome, and I think I saw one or two other shows. But the Bangor Pavilion back then used to be just basically a big, giant kind of open field. They did have seating in the middle and then in the back, but it was all open, and it was like just a big open field. And there was no staircases. You were really limited. There was only like one or two spots for concessions. There weren't a whole lot of choices for areas to go for the bathroom. They didn't have a lot of food there, but this was really nice. You had all of these like spots you could go to, and the seating wasn't really that particularly comfortable. It wasn't stadium seating back then, but this was really nice. I was really impressed with that. And when I got in there, the first band was playing. Um, and it was a band I never heard about. They were called King Parrot. They were not. I wasn't really a big fan of them. They were apparently they're apparently a band I think from Australia. And what I remember them doing is like every song and between every song that they kept making saying cunt for some reason, and then making all of these jokes around the word cunt and trying to be funny. I don't know what was going on. It was just weird. But they were, I don't know, I didn't really dig them. They were pretty, I thought they were kind of trash, actually. And the sound was not very good. It was all like, all you could hear was, was the bass drum and the bass. And it was like, I don't know even how to really describe their music. It was kind of like, I don't know, they kind of just came across as like super kind of generic. And, it was just like, they had this punk kind of sound. They had this very thrash metal sound. They even had a little bit of like, but they had this real kind of screamo vibe, which I wasn't into. And the singer was awful, and he would just scream and just like, but it was just, I don't know, it was super cheesy and just super generic. And I wasn't really digging them. But they played for I don't know 30 minutes, and right when I got there they had just started playing, so I had plenty of time to get inside and everything. So, and they played for a little while, and the space was pretty full by then. There was quite a few people in there. And then there was a break, and then it got a little bit darker out, and it was a beautiful summer day, which was awesome. It was a beautiful night, nice breeze. The theater, like I said, is a really nice venue. I was really impressed with it. And there was a little bit of a break, and then Lamb of God came out. And again, Lamb of God is another band. I'm not like they put on a good show. They had a big like stage production, which was cool. They had the light system that they had was really uh, pretty impressive. They actually had like fireworks and stuff. But I'm not really, I don't know, I'm not really into their music very much. I don't know what it is. There's something about, like they're definitely very talented, and they were pretty, like they put on a good performance, a good show. But they're just so, I just feel like a lot of their music is so, um, just kind of predictable. I feel like they do a lot. They incorporate a lot of tried, you know, all of these like kind of metal cliches that you hear in music, and the music is just really predictable, and it does have this generic quality. I think they do have some cool grooves and they're pretty interesting, but I'm not a fan of the vocals. I feel like the vocals are very very one dimensional, um, and it's just really generic. I just feel like, and I know Lamb of God is this huge band. Like I think they've won some Grammys, and they're a huge band, and they were definitely better than the first band that came out. They were definitely professional. They were tight. Some of their music was pretty interesting, but I just thought, I've listened to them before. I've given them a chance, but I don't know. It just made me want to like listen to like Cannibal Corpse or something. It was just, I don't know. And they're kind of like labeled as this like thrashy kind of metalcore band, but I don't know. It's a little bit too screamo for me at times, especially around the vocals. And I feel like the way they create their music and a lot of the parts in their music are just like really generic, and I've heard it before, and it's like there's nothing unpredictable about it. I don't know. But they did play a pretty good set. The sound was pretty good for them too. I was impressed, and they were pretty entertaining. And then they played for quite a while, and then there was a big break, and then Pantera was coming out, and I was blown away by how incredible they were live. Again, like I've said, I've been checking out a lot of videos of them throughout the tour that they've been doing. They've been playing their own headlining shows, and then they've been doing these shows with Metallica, and I've been really impressed with how amazing they sound. Um, but I honestly say, after seeing Pantera live with this current kind of incarnation, the videos that I've seen don't really do them justice by how just incredible they were. Like, really, just I was blown away by how. Well, I mean, first and foremost, the sound when they came out was just incredible. Like, I'm not a big. When I was in high school and in college, I used to go to lots of big metal festivals, and at big theaters, big arenas, or big outdoor venues. And as I've gotten older, I like the smaller. I've always liked them, but the last times I've gone to concerts, like even when I saw Morbid Angel, it was like 900 people packed in this like tiny little room. I love usually I love smaller intimate shows because of the intimacy factor. And I hadn't been to big shows in a long, long time. And one of the things too around going to big shows is that you might have to sit far, far back where the performers on stage are essentially little ants, and then the sound isn't very good. It's maybe it just there's a cutoff point to how good the sound will be. Depending on the your location. But this was next level. Like, the sound was incredible. Like, for going to a big show, and this was a big show. There was, I mean, I don't really know how many people were there, but there were thousands. I would say, maybe 7 to 8 thousand people there, and it was huge. It was huge, and the sound was just absolutely incredible. It was definitely the best sound I've ever heard at a massive venue. It was incredible. I mean, you could hear everything. You could hear a pin drop in between even all of the heavy and all music and all the distortion going on. It was just incredible. One of the things I've always loved about Pantera and their sound, obviously their sound of their influences of their music, but like I've always felt they have, like a hardcore influence. They have like, an obvious like kind of metal influence, uh, you know, like an '80s metal sound, or like a heavy Black Sabbath influence, and also a thrash metal influence, a little bit of a punk influence in their music. And as the band had progressed over the years, I felt like their music got even more extreme and more heavy and more intense. And I think they were influenced by 2 Degree Death Metal, especially like the last 2 albums that they did, or I should say the Great Southern Trendkill and well, shit, what was the name of the album? The 2 albums where I feel like Pantera really ushered in a new level of like aggression and just pure heaviness was, definitely when Far Beyond Driven came out. The music on that album is just so incredibly intense and just so brutal. And also, I feel there's certain tunes on the Great Southern Trendkill that took on felt like they took on this new thing of incorporating, more extreme forms of heavy music into their style, death metal, and just taking it to a whole nother level. Um, so, and the thing that I've always loved about Pantera is how their instrumentation, even though it's a four-piece band, I've always thought their sound is very much like a trio because Phil Anselmo is just the singer for the band. So every time, when Dimebag Darrell, Rex is an amazing bass player, and Vinnie Paul was an amazing drummer. But so every time that there was a solo breakdown or certain kinds of build ups in their songs, because they were essentially a trio, you could really hear each part. It was never marred down with abrasive rhythm guitar. It was all like all the parts were really distinct, and you could always hear those parts really clean, like what the drums were particular, like what the drums were doing in that particular section in that song, or what the bass was doing, and also the solo. I'm a huge fan of the power trio thing, so I've always felt they had that sound, but in the metal context. And the thing that I was really blown away with this new kind of thing that they're doing was that they still had that sound. Like you could hear all the nuances in the songs, and everybody, it was the sum of all the parts, but everybody was highlighted at the same time. And Zach Wilde and Charlie Benante, I was just blown away by how incredible they were. Zach Wilde was a beast, and Charlie Benante completely insane. And I have to say, Phil and Sam, though, he sounded absolutely incredible. I think he has definitely, as he's gotten older, he kind of takes care of himself a little bit more. The last time I saw Pantera was at Ozfest many years ago, and they were amazing. But he was completely shit faced on stage the whole time, and he was like he couldn't at one point couldn't really stand up. They still sounded like incredible, but he was like pretty sloppy and just like stumbling all over the stage, and like couldn't understand anything he was saying at times, and his voice would blow out every now and then. but his vocals were just super sharp, and he sounded amazing. I was really impressed, and he was you got the sense of when he was on stage that he was like clear headed and he was really focused, and the whole band was just like next level. I mean, I was just blown away, and the feeling that I got after the show was just like, I hope these guys continue this. I I would love to see them put out new music, just because they were so damn good. And the thing that was so cool was, I mean, they did so many great tunes and they covered a really good variety of songs. One of the coolest things, they did an encore of Slaughtered, which is on Far Beyond Driven, which is probably my favorite studio album of theirs. And Slaughtered is like definitely I is probably my favorite Pantera song, and it's the most brutal song that they have. I think to me, it's like a death metal song. I mean, it's just brutal as all fuck. And they played that, and I was just like, oh yes, as an encore, and it was amazing. But I felt like they could easily um, continue on, not just as a touring band, but maybe write some new music and keep Pantera as a thing. And it was great. I mean, I was just blown away by it. And the energy, they kept up the energy. The stage presentation that they had, the light show was just phenomenal. But again, the sound was just unbelievable. By far the best sounding concert I've ever experienced at a really big venue. Um, and again, it's been years since I've been to a show like that, and especially a metal show. When I've gone to metal shows, in the last 5 or 10 years, they've always been at smaller venues. And but before that, gone to see many shows like that. But this was, from what I remember, even though it was a long time ago, the sound for last night's show was the best I ever heard at a big venue. It was incredible, and it didn't feel like, even though they were far away, I was sitting far back. It felt intimate. It felt intimate where I could see them and I could feel that energy, and the audience was totally terrific and amazing, and the energy in the space was pretty magical, and I was blown away. And they played, and I think for the price of the tickets, there was a lot of music. I mean, the whole show started at 6:30 and went till about quarter after 10. So you kind of got your bang for your buck. And Pantera played a nice long set. They played for maybe an hour and 30 or hour and 40 minutes. So, and they had a great variety. They played a lot of the old tracks and the later stuff. They did a really great job. The thing that I loved about them too was they definitely stuck true to form with the song arrangements, but I felt that they were also like kind of improvising. There were a few songs that they played, especially in the later part of the night, where it felt like Zach Wilde and Charlie Benante and just the band in general, but especially those guys, they were really like playing off of each other, and they were kind of jamming, and they were adding these like new kind of things or new sections to certain songs, and it was pretty fantastic, like, and they weren't like the record, and I like that. There was this kind of spontaneous energy between the two of them, and I was just blown away by how amazing they sounded. I was really impressed. Um, so I really hope they continue this. I really hope I'd see them again in a heartbeat, easily. But I hope when it comes to Pantera, as it is, I mean, maybe this is just what it is, and it's a real genuine tribute to the band and to its legacy, and that's great and terrific. But maybe the idea of them continuing this legacy and by creating new music, I could totally see that, and I would absolutely be interested in that and seeing what they could do, because the playing was just phenomenal, phenomenal. And I posted some videos and some things about Facebook about it. And old friend of mine from high school, Kevin Brooks, had commented how, in the '90s he had seen, Pantera twice, like I did. I've seen them about 2, 3 times, and it was, in that time period. And one of the first bands he ever saw was Black Label Society, and that's Zach Wild's band. And it made me think of, oh wow, like that's crazy, because that's a weird connection, because the first concert I ever went to was Ozzy Osbourne, and it was during the No Rest for the Wicked tour. I was like, I think I was 12 or 13, and it was the first concert I ever went to, and Zach Wild was the guitar player in that band back then. He took over for Jake E. Lee after he left Ozzy's band, and he played with Ozzy for quite a few years. So it was just like, holy shit, that's weird, like a weird full circle. And the opening band for Ozzy was Anthrax, and Charlie Benante played drums, and it was at Meadowlands Arena, and I was like 12 years old. So it's just like kind of weird, trippy. So amazing show. So I highly recommend it. Um, Tickets are pretty costly, I'm sure, for the regular price, but it's worth it. They fucking brought the shit. So this is Jason Dean. So thanks again for your support, and we will see you next time. Peace.